And I wanted to make a variation from the vampire with the pointed teeth, which is a thing we inherited from Lugosi's Dracula, and really has varied very little in the rest of the vampirism history. And in Kronos, I created what I considered a very unique take on vampirism from an intellectual point of view, if you will, you know, from the story and the character and so forth. And I wanted on Blade 2 to take a very unique biological approach.
Or simply the next logical step.
If the romantic vampire in the popular imagination right now is sort of Tom Cruise in Interview with the Vampire, this time I wanted to revert more to the animal. I wanted these vampires to be more like leeches, to be more like just a thing that is there to take your blood, and that's it. There's no erotic exchange, there's no subtext. It's just like they just want to drain you. They're not giving you the keys of eternity, they're not giving you nights in the moonlight, they just want to suck you dry. The first design I made of the Reapers, which was the basis of it all, was just the idea of having a thing have a mouth that occupied almost like half of its face.
Guillermo does a lot of drawings, and I do little sketches as well. And Guillermo and myself, we always had kind of a vision in our heads of what these Reapers would look like.
Well, the Reapers originally on David's were like shape-shifting creatures, meaning they essentially could change into anything in order to get to your blood reservoir, you know? And what I wanted to do is just have them do one single change, but make them organically, internally, completely different from vampires.
These things are as different from us as we are from you.
So I applied what I call the National Geographic approach to design, which is let's try to make it, let's reference exclusively from real life animals. And then by the end of it all, when you go and design, instead of referencing other movies, you're referencing anemone, predators that are like underwater predators and so forth. And when you do that, you end up doing a more realistic design. You know, what would happen if you know, a leech, in its function, is essentially not worried about its features. You cannot see a handsome leech and an ugly leech. They're all just there to do what they do, extract the blood. So I said, if these things were that efficient, then half of their face would really be just a pumping machine. So the design was originally, I started playing with the idea of their face splitting, and then I thought I had the idea of having their mouth expand. And finally we locked into what is in the movie, which is essentially a creature that would keep its feeding apparatus like hidden, protected until it was time to feed. The first thing I did was do a quick sketch to tell them what I thought the Reaper should look like, more or less. This was quickly outdated by sketches done by far better draftmen than me.
The guy who does a lot of our renderings and our design work, Constantine, we sent him actually over to the office, and he sat there and had discussions with Guillermo for quite a while, and they came up with the look.
This undulates, it latches on, and then you see the bladders move.
It kind of, even our hero.
One of the things they kept talking about was very young, hip-looking, but then going in with the blood bank scene, kind of hip, edgy, strung-out, druggy sort of thing. You know, kind of like that androgynous, thin, bald. You can imagine the body-piercing thing. So it needed to be very hip and on the edge. We then did a series of clay maquettes where we sculpt out the Reaper open maw concept. And we would sculpt out in full-size and clay every stage of a Reaper open maw, from just the little scar to opening a little bit more, to opening more, to the full pullback. And then bring Guillermo in and have discussions, what we want the interior of the maw to look like, how we want all of this stuff to happen.
Once the design was locked, we logged into the approach. How much of it was going to be digital, how much of it was going to be physical. Jamie! Stand up and look at him! Good, very good, perfect.
And the combination of using physical prosthetics and CG prosthetics. We've seen a little bit of it here and there, but I don't think we've ever seen half man, half creature as a live actor ever before. I can't think of anything that's like that.
Most people these days go a lot with digital effects and not enough with physical to sell them. I like to blend both.
We've got the Nomac open mouth appliance. Now this one, we've sculpted all the way open. I know there's an issue on teeth. I hope you decide to leave the teeth in. I think it looks better myself. This entire area will be chroma key green. The teeth will be a veneer that goes on top of his lip. So I'll have an acrylic piece of that goes on top that'll be the teeth, so that we can actually reveal the teeth a little bit and see it makes it a little bit scarier. But all this will be green. Once again, we're going to sculpt this in relief just in case. You might not have to replace it digitally, but if you don't like it, we'll paint it green or cut it out. But this one is folded all the way back. We're thinking as well, the way this will work is we've got our edge right here. So the idea is we've got Nomac in makeup, and what we'll do is we'll say, okay, let's put him in his folded back mouth appliance. And we'll blend this on top of his makeup. It should only take about an hour or so. It will be pre-painted. And that way we can stick it right on top of his other makeup, and that's how that works.
It's when you get a director like Guillermo who just knows the techniques, and he's not scared to use everything in his whole bag of tricks, you know, and he's not a director who just wants to do CG stuff just because it's the latest, greatest thing, you know. If it's gonna work to use like a sock puppet or something, you know, in the back, he'll do that, and it's great, and he benefits from it, and you come up with a better product.
The CG that they're using for my character particularly, it's just like you think, wow, this is an unbelievable amount of work, and the expense and the kind of just the effort that's gone into these puppets, and the whole kind of behind the scenes thing is fascinating.
The proboscis, which the big tongue, was a little bit of a dilemma as far as, you know, how far does it come out and how graphic should we make it, you know. Basically, it's pretty risky.
I remember recently showing some of the footage to some friends, and I hadn't prepared them for what they were going to see. And the women literally were screaming just seeing the raw footage. So I know I can't wait to be in the first preview of this movie and the audience to watch them freak out when it happens. I mean, it's going to be amazing. And
you get sensitized to this stuff. You know, you're working on it, and it's like, God, yeah, but wouldn't it be great, you know, if he just, like, you know, something really bad happened, and then you show it to, like, your parents, and all of a sudden you're painfully aware of how far you've gone, and just like, oh no, I've done it now, you know, and it's hard not to get too carried away with it.
They started off, you know, that there were going to be a lot more puppets than digital effects. There are some puppets in the film, but we ended up replacing more shots than we ever thought. And on set, there were times when we'd try a puppet, and then Guillermo would just say, well, let's just do the maw. And we, at that time, it was a guess that the maw would work.
The puppets work great, you know, and a lot of times there are shots in the film that are just puppets, and that's really cool, but it is a tool. And you'll find the same limitations as you would with just using the computer graphics.
Well, the advantage, obviously, is the mobility without the bulk and the cumbersomeness of cables and cranes and pulleys and dollies and rods and puppeteers. That is obviously the biggest advantage. Now, in terms of operation, also, you can never pack in basically less than a square foot of space as much mechanicals as you need to make it feel completely real. So the CG animated maw allows you for bigger freedom in the movement.
But the one thing that you do benefit with puppets that you really have a hard time with computer is the physicality of the material. So, you know, how it looks. It's an actual thing being photographed right there on the set.
We always wanted to combine them, but we wanted to combine them with very active moths in the move and all that being CG, and the puppets being more stationary and so forth. Ultimately, we mix and match, and we did some of each in both cases. And I think that if you combine techniques, if you use physical and CG, and make the CG as good as you can to make it physical, and make the physical as fluid as you can to make it look like CG, then the eye of the audience goes, how did he do that? And the moment they don't know, they believe. And remember, faith is only hopeful ignorance.
There was a lot of discussions with Guillermo, the director, backwards and forwards as to where we were going to take the look. A little bit of a unique look. Give it some edge. When you have a species that lives for thousands of years, you can draw from any warp of life, any era. There's a little Japanese element, there's a little hussar element, there's futuristic. I mean, it is all over the map. And that's really great to be able to bring eclectic elements together, that you're not frozen in a time period. And not just eras, but cultures. There's a little native element, there's street kids, really anything goes. And also, because this is Blade 2, carry through some of the feeling from the original Blade, but not make it a Bible. Allow there to be artistic movement.
We started doing basic concepts from my drawings, and then turn them into more elaborate costume designs.
Because it morphed through several different stages, and that probably took about 2 months of sketching. There were many, many sketches that were done that were never used, where it gave the director an opportunity to see it coming to life and seeing the whole thing becoming a living comic book.
Cool outfit.
Since I knew I wanted to do anime or anime style thing and comic book style things, I tried to have my notes in my notebook reflect that. So I designed the first approach to the ninja and some ideas for the battle suits for the blood pack.
With the blood pack, because their costumes are all leather and their uniforms were really simple, rather than going with some really complicated design and piping and padding and all of that, we made it very, very, very simple and skin tight.
You look smashing.
Thank you.
And the idea was just to make a uniform that would be both practical and very beautiful looking, since these guys would be very vain. They would be like an elite force, and they would like to be shiny and black and really, and evoke a little bit of fascist things, because I think Damaskinos is essentially a racist and a purist, and I think that he, like every supremacist, he would like his troops to look really polished.
Blade, this is Overlord Eli Damaskinos.
Well, he's 5,000 years old with taste, and there's a definite regal sense of I am king. Again, all very muted, but incredibly rich. He has 3 main cape outfits. One of them was a beautiful upholstery material that we had to go in and color because it was too bright. We literally went in with felt pens and colored it because it wasn't quite the right shade, but it had the right texture, and the patterns and everything were fantastic. One brocade we had handmade in England, where you can have you can pick all your own colors. The other one is an iridescent moire green. It's fuchsia on the inside and green on the outside. And it has Damaskinos seals hand-painted all over it. And that's the one that he walks into the bloodbath in. Scud was really fun because it was the one place where we decided to put a little color. And so Scud's wardrobe was street grunge, but it would have been so easy, again, just to go black. We'd done almost everything in the movie black. But we decided that this would be fun if we sort of tipped him over the scales and just made, like almost everything he has on is red. Right down to his shoes are red. But when again, it's all these different shades of red and, just shades of distressing, or where they're just these different levels where some things he's always had for years, and he really does look like this, weeded out hippie, ex-hippie something or other, I don't know.
All right. About to get a brand new bag.
Everything was made for the show, with the exception of Whistler. We bought a few things for Whistler and Scud, but every other piece of wardrobe for the main cast was built. So we probably had 120 other outfits or more because they have so many pieces. I mean, they all have so much of everything because of all the different activities that go on. It's a lot. And then there's a big background scene in the House of Pain where there were 450 extras. That was pretty amazing to get, 450 Czech extras looking like vampires. It was a lot of fun, and they were really great to work with. Blade was established so strongly in the first movie, so to be able to make him a little bit more high-tech, a little bit more conscious of style, everything is just a little better quality. The original style is maintained, but it's enhanced. So we took elements of the design because he has this beautiful design tattoo.
He's had a lot more adventures, so every time he has a great adventure, he adds more tattoos to symbolize that adventure.
We took elements and used that, so there was a little bit of embellishment on the wardrobe, but as an insignia more than just design for the sake of design. One of the other things that was really difficult through the whole movie, and particularly with Blade's costume, was dealing with black. Almost all the wardrobe in this movie is black. Between the texture and the light refraction and the shade of black it was, how many shades of black can you make? Well, you could actually make an infinite number. So that all the materials in his clothes, there is a separation between all of the pieces, and it's all the different shades of black. He doesn't look like just a black hole, because sometimes if you have someone in a black wool suit, it is just a walking head. From the original movie, there was a sense that he didn't have anything on him that wasn't useful. A very street smart, practical Blade. And the costume originally had a lot of heavy buckles and things like that that were very cool looking and looked like they had some purpose. What we did was we took that same philosophy and stylized it. For example, we actually had those buckles custom made. So they're a unique shape. Also, you can't tell how they close. Actually, it's all magnetized. So it's still utilitarian, but it has a lot of style. And that was sort of carried through with other elements of it too. The materials that we used in his pants look like they're leather, but they're actually this latex-covered lycra, so they're completely flexible so he can fight in them without there being any need for a special pair of pants for him to move into for that. And then, because there was a lot of action in the water, we took the finest neoprene fabric, which also has a lot of elasticity to it. When you're standing still, they look really smart. They're really, because you don't, usually with neoprene, it's skin tight. Well, we made it like regular pants, but it had a thermal quality for when he was in the water.
I get so much satisfaction from it.
Peter Frankfurt and I, the other producer, first came to Prague, where Wesley had his first costume fitting. And it had been 4 years since he played the character. And he put on the costume this time, and he, buckled up the harness, and he put on the coat, and he drew out the blade. And it had been 4 years since he'd done it, and he drew it out, and it was just Wesley and Peter Frankfurt and the costumer and myself in the room, and he drew out the blade, and he said, looked in the mirror and said, "Oh yeah, I'm back." And it was just such a great moment 4 years later. It was really fun.
And that's what makes it exciting. I mean, that's what we like about Blade. Get your laid out. And it has not only the whole horror dynamic, it has comedy as well. It looks great. This one is going to look even more beautiful than the first one. And then it has this whole martial arts stylized and sometimes vicious action dynamic, which you don't usually find all of this in one film.
There were essentially two fight choreographers. Donnie, who is one of my most admired martial arts actors and artists from the Hong Kong movies he's done.
Honestly, in the beginning, I didn't expect to be participating in this film. And when Guillermo called me and I met him in LA, and he told me to read this part, and at that time I wasn't really interested in playing that part because I was more into the choreography of this film rather than the role.
And his stuff is in the movie, and his stuff is a little more whimsical. And actually, we had to tame it down a little bit in how whimsical it was, because Blade's fighting style is not acrobatic; it's more street. It's very violent, very direct and hard punching.
Blade's system of fighting is kind of whatever works.
He has his own little flavor, you know, and I respect that. I appreciate that. I actually don't think you should always follow the set pattern of a choreographer or a director.
It's I'm gonna hit you with this, I'm gonna stab you with that, I'm gonna cut you with that.
3, 2, 1, action!
It's all about the emotion of a character.
Take care. Mark. Mark.
3, 2, 1, action!
He could be expressing himself in a very still, emotional way.
Reveals to be hunted.
Or he can express himself in a very physical way.
If I can pick this bottle up over here, I'm gonna bottle you to death.
It all comes from within, so therefore, Wesley, as Blade, he has his own unique character. So every move, punch and kicks comes from Wesley Snipes playing Blade.
He uses whatever he can, he doesn't care.
By all means, that is originality. So therefore, you know, he should go ahead and continue to maintain that
street style,
that uniqueness.
The second one was Jeff Ward, who was the choreographer on the first movie, and whom I had the tightest collaboration. I really think that Jeff is a genius. I think he is one of the most gifted, inventive, enthusiastic, virtuoso choreographers I've ever met, and his stuff is always original.
Jeff has been with me since Streets of Gold days, and together, he comes up with structure, I come up with some of the crazy, ridiculous stuff, and we put it together, and he can execute it.
We go back as far as 12 years ago, and our friendship, our whole collaboration on films and everything, we've developed this relationship that carries through on each project.
He's the structure and form to much of what you see is the action dynamic to Blade. And he's a great martial artist as well.